Now that you've had your unit test, we're going to move on to your next page of your notebook. So if you will get out your interactive notebook and turn to your table of contents, and I want you to fill in your next two page numbers, pages 10 and 11, and the title of those will be prime factorization. Now the purpose of this video, we're only going to do page 10, but eventually we will get to page 11. So pause your video and label your table of contents. Now that you have labeled your table of contents, turn to your next blank two-page spread. Remember, next blank two-page spread. And on the left page, you are going to label that as page 10. So turn to your next two-page spread, and on the left page, page 10, label it Review of Prime Composite Numbers. Pause your video and do that now. So you should have labeled the left side, page 10, and you should have learned in 5th grade what prime and composite numbers are. So the purpose of this brief video is for us to review what prime and composite numbers are so that we can go to our next skill, which is prime factorization, and then we're also going to be able to use this for greatest common factor and least common multiple, which is what we will get to eventually. On page 10, the first thing I need you to write down is the definition of factor. Pause the video and write the definition of a factor. So you should have written that a factor is a number that divides evenly without a remainder into another number. For example, let's look at the number 10. Pause your video and copy this down just like you see it. Okay, so thinking about the number 10, I'm going to think of numbers that divide evenly into 10 without a remainder. So 1 is a factor of 10 because 1 goes into 10 10 times. 2 is a factor of 10 because 2 goes into 10 5 times. 5 is a factor of 10 because 5 goes into 10 evenly. It goes twice. And then finally, 10 is a factor of 10 because 10 divides into 10 one time. Pause your video and make sure you have this example written down and the factors of 10. Now that you know what factors are, and I've done one example with you, right now I want you to do this next example. I want you to make a list of the numbers that will divide evenly into 8. Pause your video, copy this example down, and then write the factors. Okay, hopefully you listed the factors of 8 as being 1 goes into 8 evenly, 2 goes into 8 evenly, 4 goes into 8 evenly, and 8 goes into 8 evenly. Check your work and make corrections as you need to. If you need to pause the video to make your corrections, do that now. Now that you know what a factor is, we're going to review from 5th grade what prime and composite numbers are. Pause your video and copy this neatly onto page 10 of your notebook. So you should have copied neatly that a prime number is any whole number greater than 1. That's going to be important, with exactly, no more, no less, but exactly 2 factors. And those factors will be 1 and the number itself. So let me go through that again. Make sure you have the definition of prime number. You should have written it neatly. If it's not neat, go back and make your paper neat. Prime number is a whole number greater than 1 with exactly 2 factors, and those factors are 1 and the number itself. For example, pause your video and copy this down. We're going to list a few examples of prime numbers. I'm going to give you an example. We're going to talk about why it's prime, and then you're going to list some of your own. So let's start off with an easy number. Write down the number 5. 5 is a prime number because the only two numbers that divide evenly into 5 is 1 and itself. I'm going to write them in factor pairs. 1 times 5 is 5, which means those are factors of 5 because 1 goes into 5 evenly and 5 goes into 5 evenly. But those are the only two factors of 5, so that means it is a prime number. Another prime number would be the number 17. The only two numbers that divide evenly into 17 are 1 and 17. Pause your video and write down the factors of 17. Now that I've given you two examples of what prime numbers are, I want you to list two more prime numbers and write their factors underneath them. Pause your video and write two more prime numbers and their factors. Now that you know what prime numbers are, let's go ahead and review from 5th grade what a composite number is. Pause your video and copy this neatly onto page 10. Now that you have copied this, you should have down that a composite number is any whole number greater than 1. Can't be 1, it's got to be a number greater than 1 with more than 2 factors. That means 3 or more factors. So whereas the examples up here have 2 factors, the composite numbers will have more than 2. This should be a review from 5th grade. Alright, so let's list some examples. Pause your video and write examples neatly on your paper. The first one we're going to start with is 12. I want you to write down the number 12. Pause your video and write it down. And we're going to think of all the numbers that divide evenly into 12 with no remainder. Or we can look at it like this. What numbers can we multiply together to get 12? That's another way of looking for factors. Well, I always like to start with 1. So let me think. 1 goes into 12. Any number has a factor of 1. And 1 goes into 12 12 times. So the two factors of 12 are 1 and 12. Now let's go to 2. 2 is a factor of 12. How do I know that? Because 12 is even. 2 goes into 12 6 times. Or in other words, 2 times 6 is 12. So those are factors of 12. 3 goes into 12 evenly. How do I know that? Because I know my 3 multiplication tables, and it goes into 12 4 times, or in other words, 3 times 4 is 12. So these are all of the factors of 12. Now notice there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 factors of 12. So because that's more than 2 factors, that's 3 or more, then that means it is a composite number. Pause your video and write this down. Okay, let's look at another composite number. Let's take the number 21. Do not assume that because 21 is an odd number, that means it is prime. Not all prime numbers will be, or not all odd numbers are prime. So let's start by thinking of numbers that we can divide evenly into 21. Well, 1 goes into 21, 1 goes into every single number, and it goes in there 21 times. So 1 times 21. 2 is not a factor of 21 because 21 is not an even number. 3 is a factor of it. How do I know that? Because I know my 3 multiplication tables, and I know that 3 goes into 21 7 times. 4 is not a factor of it. 5 is not. 6 is not a factor of it, and I'm back up to 7, but I already have that listed, so I don't need to list it more than once. So looking at my factors of 21, there are 4 factors. 1, 2, 3, 4 factors, which means it is a composite number. Now that we've gone through 2 examples, out beside these 2 examples, oh, by the way, if you didn't write this down, the factors of 21, you need to pause the video and do that now. Now I want you to come up with 2 more examples of composite numbers. Write the numbers here and then list their factors below, just like we did in the first two examples, but you're coming up with two composite numbers of your own and list out the factors. Pause your video and do that right now. Now that you have a quick review of prime and composite numbers, this should review what you learned in 5th grade, and we're going to need this information to what we're going to do go to next. Make sure that page 10 of your notebook has all of your notes and examples and that it is very neat. Once you have done all of that, you may close your interactive notebook.